everyone, and welcome to the LTH product briefing. I am delighted today to be joined by Ivy Gray, the Chief Strategy and Growth Officer at WordRake. Welcome, Ivy.
Thanks so much for having me, Nikki.
It's a real pleasure. We often do these interviews with founders, but your influence and impact on WordRake has been considerable. Can you tell us a little bit, first of all, about the origin story of WordRake itself, how it came to be?
So WordRake was launched in 2012 by our founder, Gary Kinder, a legal writing expert who taught over 1,000 writing courses to some of the largest law firms and corporations throughout America. Over the course of his teaching, he realized there was a pattern to the things that he had to teach. And those things became signals of wording. And if you always looked for these signals of wordiness, then you could easily find places to improve your writing. And he thought, what if I made a computer program to do this? And then every writer could have the benefit of my teaching in their computer. And that's how WordRake was founded in 2012.
It's really interesting. It's so fascinating to me that you have multiple patents in relation to this product, because a lot of people would think, well, it's writing. We all write, but it's not as simple to properly communicate as people might think. And Ivy, I know you have a background as well in communications and law. Can you tell us a bit about your journey and how you got to work with WordRake ultimately?
So I had a long and winding path to law and legal tech. I was actually a journalist, and then I went into public relations, all before going to law school. And I went to law school because I wanted to tell stories and convince people to make change. And that change would be within the law and really turn their lives around. So I fell in love with bankruptcy, and I became a corporate bankruptcy lawyer right when things were starting to crash, which was super exciting. And I practiced corporate bankruptcy law, mostly in New York, for 10 years. And in that time, I did a lot of writing and research. And as you know, corporate bankruptcy is both a litigation practice and a transactional practice. So I had to hone and maintain my writing skills on both sides of the aisle. With that, I became the firm's go-to writer. And over time, I started to look for tools that would improve the process to help us get through it faster and do a better job. And with that, I started using WordRake, and I used it for the last 3 years of my practice, and I absolutely fell in love.
It's interesting. I mean, your journey, you are still a storyteller. You're now helping other people to improve the way they tell stories. Is there a way that you could express briefly the problem that WordRake sets out to solve?
Yes. So in business writing, the elements that matter most are clarity, brevity, and simplicity. And WordRake is designed to help with all three. So it's clear and concise editing software designed for sophisticated writers. It offers over 35,000 editing algorithms to improve those essential elements. And in one click, it detects jargon, legalese, needless modifiers, nominalizations, and more to help improve your writing. And then it suggests changes in the familiar track changes form. So if you've ever used track changes, then you already know how to use WordRake. Just click, accept, or reject your suggestions. Our goal is to be a partner and a collaborator with writers, not to take over the writing process. We want to make your ideas better and help you communicate them better. So WordRake was designed for legal writers specifically, but it's since expanded to include edits for business and government writers as well. WordRake respects legally operative phrases and will protect key legal terms of art. However, if you get into an argument with us about what is a key legal phrase, we do know the difference. We look it up and we refer to all of the books.
Thank you, Ivy. Are you able to show it to us? I'd love to see WordRake in action, and I'm sure our viewers would as well.
Yes, I would love to. So WordRake is an add-in to Microsoft Word and Outlook. Normally, when you open a document, you start on the home screen. And if you were just going to spell check, you'd slide right over to review. That's where you get spell check, etc. But right next to spell check, you'll find the WordRake tab once it's installed. So click on it. When you click the Rake button, it will ripple through your document, making changes in the track changes form. You can choose to edit for simplicity or brevity, or both at the same time. So I've already raked some of this document to speed up the process, and you'll see that further down with simplicity mode. So what we're going to do is highlight the remaining text, so we will only review the brevity mode suggestions. So I'm going to uncheck simplicity, leave brevity checked, and click Rake. As you can see, it ripples through your document, marking it up in the track changes form. When it's done, you'll get to decide which edits you like and which edits you don't like. And I like that we have this dialog box here that shows you the progress. Now, as you can see, you can highlight sections that you'd like to rake. So if you're in a rush and you don't want to wait, or if you're just a highly efficient person, the highlighting method will work for you. we can rake about 10 to 25 pages in under a minute, which is good enough for what most lawyers would do. So now we have our suggestions and we can go through them.
Just looking at the different aspects of the brevity mode on here.
Yes.
I mean, this is not just about plain language. And you did say that plain language best practices are built into WordRake.
Yes.
It's also about clarity. Is that the feedback you get from lawyers, that it actually helps them more clearly enunciate and get meaning across?
Yes, it does. So with clarity, you will focus your language and share only the story that you wish to share, rather than the things that tumble out when you're writing and they detract from your language rather than reinforce your language or add emphasis. So for example, a short summary, many people say that, but short is already part of the definition of summary.
Right.
And you'll find things like that throughout all of our editing, where we're trying to improve your clarity. We'll even reposition some embedded phrases. So actually, I'm going to skip down to this section here, where we have, by operation of law, inserted in the middle of the sentence. We've interrupted our thought. And though that information is necessary, we can unembed or unwind the sentence and move it to the end as we have here. So once you've accepted WordRake's edits, then you see this sentence is much shorter. We've removed the interjections and moved them to the end, and it becomes a much clearer sentence. This is clearer for lawyers, lay people, anyone that you're writing to. They will appreciate these changes for a shorter, clearer, better sentence and simplified language.
And it's not just about appreciation, I imagine. I mean, when it comes to the legal context, ambiguity can be problematic, both in transactional work and litigation work.
Yes. And WordRake is actually designed to work based on parts of speech. Other tools use a find and replace system where they're looking for exact words in exact order. And those tools will limit your suggestions, or they could make irrelevant suggestions because they aren't looking at context. But WordRake is looking at the context. We are saying, is this phrase operating as a noun? And is this other thing modifying that entire noun phrase? Or is this acting as an adjective? Can we change that to move it to a better place so the sentence reads more clearly, or can we cut it entirely? And we have a team of linguists that actually work on our algorithms and a team of subject matter experts who review all of the algorithms. We go line by line, sentence by sentence, every time we have a new release, asking, is this a good edit? Would somebody get this wrong? How will people feel about this? So there's an entirely human element to what WordRake is doing. And our goal behind all of it is to be a collaborator and make you better at what you can do in your uniquely human way.
So this is the brevity mode that you have on. Can we switch to simplicity and see what that looks like?
So I pre-raked some of this just to allow you to move around faster. So simplicity mode will help you transform bureaucratic writing. And our first pass at simplicity mode was based on the federal plain language guidelines that you can get at plainlanguage.gov. So we will switch out difficult words like constitutes to is, convened to met, disseminated to distributed. But one of my favorites here is what I've highlighted, promulgated. There are so many things that promulgated can mean when a lawyer writes it. So we look at the context around the word to determine what the right edit will be. Here, if you're issuing a law, then promulgated can be issued. But if you wanted to say that you suggested something, then we would write that in a different place. Same with procured. We don't always want to change procured to got, but in this context, it makes sense. And with our linguists, we study how those parts of speech work together. And we study the context to draw our own rules out of the language and how it's used and offer appropriate suggestions for your writing and the sentences that you've actually written rather than the sentences that we thought you should write.
Can you show again how easy it is to accept changes? Does it work a little bit like spell check or in Word?
It actually works just like track changes in Word. So if you're familiar with track changes, you might be one of those people who reads ahead and you can say, oh, this is good. I can imagine what these edits look like. So you can highlight a group of edits and you can accept them all at once if you'd like.
Oh, I really like that you can do a bunch at once rather than having to go through one by one as well.
Yes, but it's also important to note that we don't have an accept all button because our role is as a collaborator, not as a dictator of your document. So we want you to evaluate our have suggestions and say whether they're good. Now, if you decide that you don't like the edits, you can undo. You can review them individually. The fastest way to do it is to accept and go to next. If you don't like a certain edit, you can reject and go to next. If you aren't sure what it will look like in place, then you can accept and stay. And if that's good, then you can move on. If you're one of those people who never wants to go to the menu, then you can right click and use the context menu here. You can also set hotkeys. So WordRake works however you do, and it harnesses all of the power of Microsoft's built-in features. If you have anybody at your firm who needs to work with accessible tools, then WordRake will work within those confines as well. Anything that Microsoft has built in, WordRake will also harness.
It's almost like a guided review through your document, which is very helpful. As a writer myself, I kind of wish I had had this when I was writing my book. So does it work in exactly the same way in Outlook as it does in Word?
Yes, it works exactly the same way in Outlook. And for me, that was a gift of manna. And since most of our writing is actually in email these days, it makes so much sense to use WordRake on your emails, especially when you get an interface just like this.
And when you have it switched on, then you just write your email and it's just there automatically. You don't need to do anything else to rake it.
So when you are writing an email, you would open the email and you don't actually see the WordRake tab until you have started composing. After you're done composing or while you're composing, the WordRake tab will appear just like this, and you can choose to rake your email. Now, one thing that's cool about WordRake and email is that it only rakes what you are writing. It will not rake all of the emails in the chain that came before it. So your colleagues will not see that you thought they were wordy and you're rejecting all of their nuance and flair as they feel it may be. Instead, you're only clarifying and simplifying your own. So it respects that. So one of the things about rolling out a new tool for your firm is that adoption can always be difficult. And some places require you to do so much work before you can start using the tool. WordRake works right out of the box. All you have to do is have something that you've written, and with that, WordRake will give you feedback. But if you don't have anything that you've written yet, you can click the How to Use WordRake button, and you can get a tutorial that's right in here. So it launches a fresh document. It gives you the Just the Facts Man walkthrough of WordRake, and then you have text that you can rake. So click Rake, and it will rake your document with your suggested changes. So now you can accept those changes or reject those changes, just like you would if you were writing your own document. First use case is definitely the thing that makes the difference between whether a piece of software will be shelfware or whether it will be used. And we want WordRake to be well used. It's inexpensive. It makes a huge difference in the quality of your work. And the best way to do that is to lower the barrier to entry. We're not just trying to check boxes. Instead, we're trying to improve use. The other tool that we have is our check complexity button. Now, readability scores have been built into Microsoft for a long time. However, many lawyers don't know that they exist and they're a little afraid to use them. And part of the reason that they're afraid to use the readability scores is that it runs after spell check. And unfortunately, the feature often crashes. So we've gotten around that by adding it to the button, allowing you to save or prompting you to save before running it, and then giving you a new interface so that the feedback you get from the readability statistics actually makes sense. You can see that the average grade level for this is a college or higher. So this is a difficult document, and only 4 or 5% of adults are reading at this level. And we even give you this red context cue to show you, whoa, you should slow down and rethink this document. The other thing that we've done is we've added upward bounds in our readability features, and we've given you definitions about what each of these scores is measuring. With that information, you can now tell where you are. We give you the information and we give you enough context to make that information useful. And again, this is a tool that we added to our ribbon where we enhanced Microsoft's offering, but we didn't charge people any more for it.
I really like the fact that you think about adoption as well and how to make it easier for the end user. That's such a challenge, as you know. Ivy, thank you so much for joining us today and for showing us WordRake. It's been a pleasure. For those watching, we will insert a URL that makes it easy for you to reach out to WordRake and to Ivy. Ivy, thank you for coming on to the LTH product briefing.
Thanks so much for having me, Nikki. It's been a pleasure to show you WordRake.
Thank you.